Today's episode of the Totally Rad Show is brought to you by Netflix. Coming up, we check out a documentary about the indie game development process with Indie Game, the movie.
Today in movies, we are talking about Indie Game, the movie. This could be a historic event for us. Not event, but this could be an historic episode because it could be the first time of what may be many times that we review a movie that was made by Kickstarter.
Is it the first time?
That we have reviewed a movie.
Yeah, maybe.
That most
we brought
what
up Kickstarter movies in other segments, but yeah.
Kickstarter in our
Yeah.
segment on Kickstarter,
Wow.
but maybe in the future, a lot of movies are made. This is every day.
I think all things will be made. We have a Kickstarter-based economy, purely Kickstarter-based economy.
Perchance. So, Indie Game the movie is about indie games. It's a documentary that follows the makers and the makings of Fez, Braid, Braid is post, after it's made, and Super Meat Boy, and one other one, right? I'm drawing a blank, or is that it?
I think that's it.
I think it's it, yeah.
Okay.
It's sort of Fez and Super Meat Boy are the two that are coming out. They
Right.
interview a lot of people that were also involved in other games, but those
Including
are the
Revision 3's own.
Right, Anthony
Anthony
Carboni is in it.
Carboni.
The Destructoid people are in it. A lot of our associates and compadres
Yeah.
are in it. They go to PAX. I mean, it really follows things that we have covered on the show. We've covered all these games on the show, of course. And it's out right now for rent on iTunes or probably
Video on demand
Amazon.
and
Yeah, any
stuff.
sort of thing. So, Alex,
Yes, sir.
what did you think of Indie Game, the movie?
It's great. It's great. And super inspiring. It's one of those games that it's one of those movies that's like really inspires you to create. And also makes me kind of pine for a sort of like single determination of just seeing a project from beginning to end with no thought of anything else. I mean, especially the guys with Super Meat Boy were just like, I mean, they were hardcore two guys in that game, and it paid off, and it's great. But it really does also show. I didn't realize how, you always hear about indie games, you know what I mean? Like, oh, well, the indie games and the indie game market and it's doing so well and, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, great, it's great. But they kind of start really showing the bone structure of how indie games have started and why they're getting so accessible, and that the fact that you can make a game yourself and not have to worry about the fact that you cannot distribute it anywhere. I mean, it's almost like the music industry in a way, but even more so, I think the internet and these digital distribution platforms like Steam and Xbox Live Arcade and PSN and all of these and even Flash. I mean, some of the stuff is you can just make a game, put it up there, and if people like it, they like it, and they can play it, and you can get them.
Or iOS or...
Yeah, or iOS.
Well, I
or
think
any of
that's
that
a
stuff.
really big. If there's a sequel to this movie.
Oh yeah, it's all about
It would be all iOS.
All I was thinking was, oh well, then yeah, in the App Store. Well, in the App Store, and nobody touched on it. I think just because they weren't following people that were developing for the App Store. But it's you get to see a little bit of that mad genius, you know what I mean, and that kind of like throw everything out the window. But then also you get to see the fact that like any creative endeavor, the personalities of the people are, it's hard when you create something and you put it out in the world to receive criticism, and sometimes even in, the guy who did Braid, Jonathan Blow, even he was like, he would read a glowing review, but the reviewer didn't get out of it what he was trying to get him to get out of it, and he would be upset about that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so it's a great sort of look into the mind of the creative artist, and also the sort of neuroses of those artists, and that you have to kind of be a sort of tortured soul, you know what I mean? And also it's really just it's really uplifting. It just made me want to go, it literally made me want to start drawing, made me want to start, immediately as soon as I stopped watching it, started playing Minecraft. just because I was like, I want to get into like a cool indie game that's not polished, and it's like, I mean, one of the guys saying that like the big games smooth out all the corners that could hurt somebody, and it takes all the creativity out of it. It's sweet. It's very sweet.
It's funny. It's like when you walk out of The Karate Kid or Jackie Chan movie, I immediately want to go take karate. As a kid.
Exactly.
I was like, I never finished Super Meat Boy, so I should finish that.
Yeah.
Jeff.
Because they finished their game, and I should go finish their game for them.
I love that game. You must have some thoughts here.
In fact, I do.
Yeah.
I, too, enjoyed this immensely. It is beautifully shot. Beautifully, I thought. There's a lot of wonderful imagery in the movie, and it looked really pretty in HD. And I, of course, love the spirit of this movie. I feel like we are of a generation, and the movie speaks to this very directly, that I think the generation before us, and even before that, it would be the idea of starting a rock band. This is sort of a behind the music for this generation, where the same types of people, I think, that would start an underground indie band and would be really obsessed with the music and the message that they're trying to say, and feel very precious about the music that they're making, a generation ago. That, sort of the punk side of it, that is directly applicable to this generation, and those types of people are now drawn into creating video games. And it's something that's very close to my heart, obviously, but I think this movie examines that in a really wonderful way. And as you said, it's fun to see these people. I do think it, like those kinds of experiences with music, when people get a lot very quickly, or get the spotlight is put on them intensely at a very young age, I think it's, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the people in this movie are going to look back on this with embarrassment, because there's a lot they are sort of by necessity very self-absorbed and locked in this little place all the time, and then all of a sudden there's a camera in their face and they spew a lot of things that I sense they'll regret, but it makes for good watching, and I feel like, unfortunately, in the same way that for like a punk band, if that was at the heart of a story like this, it might be off-putting to people that aren't on the inside. I feel like this, in a lot of ways, could come across as the worst parts of what our culture is. When I say our, I mean our like video game culture, and sort of that very insular, very isolated, neurotic, as you say, and I feel like these guys aren't gonna always be that way, and a lot of this is they probably already aren't that way.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Well, I remember Fez came out, you know what I mean? So we already know how that went and what, you know what I mean? So there's already things that are different, now.
I remember hearing a little bit about Phil Fish and Fez as this was ongoing.
Yeah.
You must remember.
I was in the room when a lot of that stuff was, like him getting the award in 2008, and everybody thought, oh, Fez, and then Fez doesn't come out for years.
Did this movie give you any insight from, besides all the articles that you were probably reading as Fez, that whole process?
What my favorite parts of this movie are the sort of the smaller moments where it just shows them working and how they work, and iterating, and how they come across things, and seeing Jonathan Blow's early prototype to Braid, and seeing how close it is to what actually was put out, and seeing them work the art and revise it over and over.
The fact that one guy literally redesigned Fez 3 times.
Right.
Because he got better after 4 years of doing pixel art better, so then he went back and was like, well, that looks like I made that 2 years ago and it's not as good, so I'm going to make it again.
And there's a passion and love to that is really, as you say, inspiring and wonderful to see. And I think it does a good job of sort of highlighting that culture. But it also, a lot of the music I just feel like it's a little melodramatic for my taste, and that's just the filmmaking aspect of it. The music is very
serious.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I thought it may be the music from Braid, or from those games, but
I didn't identify it.
Could very well be wrong.
Yeah, there was a person who was credited as.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. So, what? Any other thoughts on, aside from that behind-the-scenes glimpse to video game making as a documentary, as a movie? How did you feel? A well-done documentary, or
I don't. It's hard. It'd sort of be hard pressed to find a documentary that was so poorly put together that I would notice it. Because for me, documentaries aren't really about the filmmaking, and I don't mean to offend any documentary filmmakers, but for me, it's the glimpse into a real life thing that I have no information about. You know what I mean? So
there's documentaries that have techniques. This uses a lot of interesting techniques with, as they're explaining these esoteric things, and you see like illustrations of that. Like
really cool.
And there's some of them are just talking heads, and some of them are right.
And all that stuff is great. Had all that stuff been out, I still would have thought it was a great documentary because of the content. That's what I'm saying. It's hard. It would have to be really poorly shot for me to go, it was really great content, but my God, that was a poorly made documentary. If you know what I'm saying? I thought it had all the stuff.
It was really pretty.
Like King of Kong, I thought it had all the stuff in it, that enough, illustrations when I needed it, ramps of the music when I needed it. You know what I mean? I felt there was a story, and I followed along with it, and I was very satisfied with it. So I would say, well-made documentary is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if you're even remotely interested in video games and the independent video game
if you
movement,
are interested in if you're interested in video game design,
show, I would say
you must watch this if you're interested in creating your own video games.
What about for the opposite of that? What about for your parents?
I don't know if it's. I mean, King of Kong, I would give to somebody who didn't love video games.
Right.
I would not give this to somebody who didn't love it. Heather, I had watched King of Kong, she loved it.
Right.
I would not have her watch the indie game because she'd be like, I don't know what the hell this is or what it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it is a little bit by us, for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not really one of those transcendent documentaries, but it was solid. I mean, it's a must recommend if you're interested in video games, even.
Yeah, and there's. They managed to latch on to 3 games that are huge, and that's to their credit. And I think it would be
crazy that
I think it would be interesting to see a side. We were talking about the iOS version of this, which is much more crapshoot, I think, and much more a lottery of. You put a lot of work into something, and it just it falls into obscurity because there's a billion games out there like that.
I wonder if they followed any of those and didn't include them because
I'm sure they followed at least a couple more and then didn't include them, right? I mean,
could have been
either that or they just lucked out, and
Yeah.
I mean, there was a sense. I mean, obviously, Jonathan Blow had already happened,
Right.
and there was a sense of Fez having already happened, and Super Meat Boy was getting a lot of buzz too. So I mean,
Yeah, but they had stuff from 7 months before it was released. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's way pre-reviews and stuff.
Of Super Meat Boy, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
it's a really. I found it to be. I mean, there was a few times I cringed. Like, oh man, I think I felt for those guys, and you see them be real raw a lot, which is great documentary filmmaking, but
Yeah.
Good times. Indie in the movie.
Yeah.
Boomsy woomsies.
Boomsy woomsies.
Rent it now.
All right, everybody, be sure to stick around. We're going to be answering one of your Twitter questions right after this. But first, we want to thank our sponsors, Dan Trachtenberg.
Netflix.
What?
Streams TV shows and movies directly to your Xbox 360, your PC, your Mac, your PS3, your Nintendo Wii, your Android phone, your iPhone, your many other things, I'm sure. It's very prolific, and it's awesome. I use it all the time. I was just watching I think it's 12-part documentary called America, the History of Us.
Yes.
That is phenomenal. We were talking about it this weekend. It is phenomenal. I highly recommend it. I never thought I would be interested in those kinds of things, but I was wrong. It's very interesting.
Wouldn't you be interested in the history of us?
I know. It's all boring until you realize it's fascinating. So get a free 30-day trial, and you can cancel it at any time. For the trial membership, go to www.netflix.com/TRS and sign up. Or if you're in the UK or Ireland, and let me tell you guys, you may be really interested in the story of America. You might not know all those things, other than where it gets a little ugly. Netflix.co.uk/TRS or netflix.ie/TRS.
Perfect. Well, enjoy the Netflixery, and we will see you next tomorrow. I don't know what next tomorrow is.
Join us tomorrow for our new game, Ratagories.
Today's Twitter question sent in with the hashtag TRSQ comes in from Mitchell P. Smith at Motion City Mitch, who asks, this is a humdinger.
Yeah.
Would you want to possess the powers of Daredevil, the superhero Daredevil?
We all know it.
Catch being, you have to be blind.
Ah!
Here's the cheat is that he's basically not blind.
Well, but he is blind. Unless it's raining, you can't see him.
He can't see color.
Or people,
But he doesn't have a problem
He
getting
develops
around.
He develops
He
But
can
it's
get
not
around.
like he can
Here's
see
a question that I would
chicks.
like to know.
In the movie they showed I mean,
Oh, you're basing it on
That's the big loss.
the-
I kind of agree. That's the
are
big
you
loss.
kidding me?
No,
That's the big loss. That is the big loss.
You can't see chicks, Dan.
You can't see porn anymore.
I know. No,
I mean, what do you just now? It's all
You
you.
can hear it. Describe
You're
our
like,
porn.
I guess those are.
The
movies.
question I would
Species
like
currently.
answered is, would Daredevil
trade his powers for sight.
For sight.
We don't. Ladies and gentlemen, Daredevil. No, he's not here,
watch that
Dan.
chair.
He's not here.
I'm just
so
saying,
ask
how would
yourself
that
the
answer?
question.
I don't think so. Well, you know I'm lazy, so if I had
You
those
hate
powers,
Flippy Dippy anyway.
if I had those powers,
Welcome to
I
not
wouldn't
watching
use them
any-
very
and
well.
welcome to never seeing a TV show again. Never
the only
seeing a movie again.
the only benefit to those powers is that now you have to do all those things, save people's lives.
Dan's
I
power
don't
would
care
be
about
a
other
bell.
people's.
Like, I'm blind, get me stuff. Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah.
ding.
Yeah.
I'd like to be Flippy Dippy. I think that's cool. And I'm, maybe.
It's a tough trade. It's hard.
It's tough. I love sight, especially when you bring up girls.
lots of things.
I'm gonna say no, E.T.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna say no too. If he did more cool stuff, if it was
Just cool
flying
stuff.
or blind, although then you'd be a blind person flying through the air.
That's dangerous. That is dangerous.
Yay, flying is a whack!
Very dangerous.
What if my sonar
apologize
doesn't
to
work when I'm
every
flying? Daredevil fan out there.
Viewer that-